People say you know when something's wrong in your marriage. That there's a moment, a look, a shift, a cold snap that sneaks into the room and never leaves. But for me, it was quieter than that. It wasn't a single moment. It was 100 tiny ones. Like how Alice stopped asking me to fix stuff around the house, even though she used to make whole to-do lists and pin them to the fridge like we were on a home renovation show. Like how she started bringing her work laptop to the couch and typing away during our movie nights, claiming some last-minute report needed formatting. Or how she suddenly started going on team-building dinners on Thursdays. Always Thursdays. But the biggest one? She laughed less. Not at jokes, not at TV, not at anything. Especially not at me. That sound, her laugh, used to light up a room. Now it barely flickered, and when it did, it wasn't for me. I'm Joe Harland. I'm 39. I inspect buildings for a living: code compliance, structural integrity, all that glamorous stuff. You'd think spending your days looking for cracks would make you good at noticing them in your own life. But let me tell you, they're a hell of a lot harder to see when they're hidden behind a smile and reheated pasta. Alice and I had been married for 14 years. We met at a 4th of July cookout when I was 25 and she was 23. She beat me at cornhole and then asked if I wanted to split a beer because she didn't like committing to a whole one. That was Alice. Smart, charming, easy on the eyes, and just the right amount of weird. We got married 2 years later. Bought a little house outside Cincinnati. Had plans for kids but never got around to it. Life got busy. Fertility stuff came up. Then more work. More deadlines. The plans faded. We were, by all accounts, a decent couple. We didn't scream. We didn't throw things. We remembered anniversaries. We ate dinner together. I thought that meant something. But as it turns out, you can be doing fine and still be headed straight for a cliff. It started one Tuesday when I came home early. There had been a site delay, wrong insulation shipment, so I figured I'd surprise Alice, maybe grab lunch together. I even picked up her favorite smoothie on the way back, which I hadn't done in forever. She wasn't home. No big deal. I assumed she was at the office, but her car was in the driveway. Now, I'm not a suspicious guy. Really. I'd like to think I'm the type who believes in giving people space, not the type who installs tracking apps or follows their spouse around like some discount detective. But seeing that empty house, her car out front, her purse on the kitchen island, it felt weird. I called her. No answer. I texted, "Hey, everything okay? Just got home early. Thought we could grab lunch." No reply. I shrugged it off, ate my sandwich, and figured she'd explain later. Maybe she was out for a walk. Or in the backyard. I didn't go looking. I didn't want to seem paranoid. That night, she told me she'd been at a team strategy lunch and forgot her phone at home. Said it was at some Mediterranean place downtown. She even name-dropped her coworkers. Sounded reasonable. Normal. But still, it itched. That was the first little pebble. The first time the facts didn't quite click into place. But the thing that really threw me off track wasn't that day. It was the Monday after, when Alice came into the kitchen while I was paying bills. "You know," she said, leaning against the counter with a casualness she'd clearly rehearsed, "we should consider consolidating our bank accounts. Like, joint savings and stuff. Makes things easier tax-wise." Now, we'd always kept things separate. Not for any bad reason. We just had different styles. I liked using cash. She was a spreadsheet and apps kind of person. But suddenly she wanted everything linked. Just like that. Out of the blue. I blinked. "You think we need to do that now?" "Well," she said, twirling her tea bag like it was a cigarette, "it's just smarter in the long run. We're not kids anymore." She kissed me on the cheek and left the room before I could ask what prompted the change. I stared at the online banking screen a long while after that. Here's the thing. When you're married, you build this little bubble around the both of you. It's warm, familiar, maybe even boring, but it's yours. And when the air starts to leak out, you don't notice it all at once. You just start breathing a little harder, wondering why things don't feel the way they used to. Over the next couple weeks, I started paying more attention. Not snooping. Just noticing. Alice was wearing more makeup on Thursdays. Like, trying out a new eyeliner kind of makeup. She started jogging in the morning. She was never a jogger. And once, when I went to grab something from the back seat of her car, there was this gym bag on the floor. Brand new. Still had the tag hanging off the side. And yet, she never once mentioned joining a gym. At work, things were picking up. I'd been overseeing this new library build down in Warren County, small town, nice folks, terrible funding. So I stayed busy. But every so often, I'd catch myself zoning out on a job site, wondering who Alice laughed with when I wasn't around, wondering if there was someone else noticing the new eyeliner, the jogs, the bag. I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious husband, the bitter watchdog. But something in me had shifted. Then came the night I really started to question things. It was the third Thursday of the month, and I'd gotten back later than usual. Alice had already eaten. Her plate was in the sink, rinsed but not washed. She was curled up on the couch in her favorite hoodie, watching the West Wing reruns. I plopped down next to her, tired, wanting a bit of that bubble back. "How was the strategy dinner?" She nodded. "Fine. We had a good talk about the upcoming audit stuff. Same crew. Mostly. Who paid?" She glanced at me like I'd asked who her first kiss was. "What? Who paid the check?" She laughed, but not the nice kind. "I don't know." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just making conversation." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of anything she said, but because I realized I didn't know who she was anymore. And maybe worse, I didn't know if she knew who I was. We were two people living in the same house, speaking the same words, but somehow missing each other entirely. The next morning, I got up early and drove to work before the sun was up. My buddy Craig, one of the senior inspectors, noticed I wasn't my usual self. "Everything all right, Joe?" I hesitated, then said the words I hadn't said out loud before. "I think Alice is lying to me." He raised his eyebrows but didn't say I was crazy. He just nodded, took a sip of his thermos coffee, and said, "You going to do something about it?" I don't know what. Yet. That yet stayed with me the rest of the day. I didn't want to spy. I didn't want to accuse. I didn't want to crack open something that couldn't be uncracked. But I did want to know. The not knowing, that was the part that ate at you. And that's how it started. Not with screaming. Not with lipstick. Not with text messages or earrings under the bed. Just a smoothie. A bank account suggestion. A gym bag that had never been used. I didn't know it then, but I was standing on the edge of something. Something that would tear through everything I thought I knew about Alice, about us, about the life we built. I just hadn't figured out how deep the crack ran yet. But I was about to. And this time, I was going to pay attention. I never thought I'd be the guy who sneaks around his own house. But here we are. Not in some ridiculous spy movie kind of way. I wasn't crawling through vents or setting up nanny cams. Just paying closer attention. Asking questions. Reading things twice. Listening better than I ever had. Because the second you start pretending everything's fine, when it's not, you're just building your own little prison. And I was done doing time in mine. I told myself I wasn't looking for evidence. I just wanted answers. The problem was, the answers didn't come cleanly. They came in puzzle pieces, out of order, buried under casual smiles, and "you're being paranoid" looks. Alice was too smart to leave anything obvious. That's what made it worse. The first real break came on a random Saturday. It was late April, warm enough that we'd usually start talking about pulling out the patio furniture and grilling. But we weren't doing any of that. Alice was behind on a report, which had somehow become her go-to excuse for not doing anything lately. She was upstairs in the office, door shut, typing like she was solving a murder. I was in the garage digging through a box of old chargers, looking for the spare to my drill battery, when I found the other thing. A thumb drive. It was shoved into the corner of the drawer we use for junk tech. The kind of place stuff goes to die: old phones, expired warranties, a broken fitted. The drive wasn't labeled, but I knew it wasn't mine. I always mark mine with tape and a Sharpie. Alice? She was always, "Don't touch my tech," unless she needed me to fix something. So, I took it. Quietly. I plugged it into my work laptop while I sat in the truck outside, just in case it was one of those decoys you see on Reddit, the kind loaded with viruses in case someone gets too curious. But it wasn't that. It was a spreadsheet. No password. Just a spreadsheet with the file name, Q4 adjustments final. Inside were line items. Dozens of them. Numbers, initials, dates, categories. And at the top of each line, 2 columns labeled Joe and CD. CD, Christian Daniels. I stared at the screen like it was in another language. Because part of me still thought, there's a good explanation. There has to be. But no, the deeper I scrolled, the uglier it got. Rose-like. March 3rd, dinner at Green Street Bistro, Joe, GCD, square root. March 10th, hotel room, Chicago, Joe, work trip, CD, square root. March 17th, expense split, gifts, Joe, $0 CD, $112. There were dates, places, codes I didn't understand. I didn't know what G meant in her shorthand. But square root was crystal clear. That meant yes. That meant he was there. There were columns labeled notes. Some of them were blank. Some of them just had the word confirmed next to them. And then, about 3/4 of the way down, I found this one. April 2nd. Full day off work. Joe. Inspection. Franklin site. CD. Heavy checkmark. Notes. First time at house. House. What house? I felt cold all over. Not angry. Not yet. Just this horrible, sinking cold that settles deep in your gut when you realize your life has been edited without your permission. I clicked into the metadata of the file. It had been modified 3 days ago. That meant she was still adding to it. Still maintaining it. Still planning around me. She was running her affair like a business. I closed the file. Pulled the drive. Sat there in the truck for a long time. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because here's the thing. I wasn't going to confront Alice with it. Not until I knew everything. I needed a plan. I needed to be smarter than she was being sneaky. So I called someone. Not a friend. Not a private investigator. Just a guy I met years ago through work. A real estate appraiser named Mike Jensen. Mike owed me a favor from back when I flagged a collapsing foundation that saved his firm a lawsuit. I asked Mike one question. Can you look up any property that is Christian Daniels listed as owner, co-signer, or occupant? I think he might be connected to something I'm working on. Mike didn't ask questions. He just said, give me a few days. In the meantime, I got creative. I synced Alice's phone calendar to the smart TV in our bedroom. Not through her phone. She locked it tighter than Fort Knox. But through the Apple account she forgot she'd used on the shared TV years ago. I didn't need to read texts or track her location. I just needed to know where she was saying she'd be. That Thursday, she was supposed to be at strategy dinner, 5:30 p.m., Jefferson's taproom. She left at 5:10. I drove by at 5:45. No Alice. No recognizable cars. No big company dinner happening on the patio. The hostess said they had one reservation that night for 2. At 8 o'clock. Under the name Daniels. It was subtle, but not slick. Like she wasn't trying to hide it. Just hoping I'd never look. She came home at 9:45 that night. Said the dinner ran long. The new intern wouldn't stop talking about blockchain. I smiled. Told her I was glad she had fun. Asked if she remembered to expense it. She said, already did. Of course she did. Saturday morning, Mike called. You're not gonna like this, he said. Your guy Christian owns a townhouse in Oakwood on Wexley Lane. Bought it in January. Co-signer, Alice Harland. I didn't respond. He added, it's small. 2-bedroom. Looks like a midweek crash pad. Nothing flashy. Probably not on the books, either. It's under a private LLC. They bought a place together. I thanked him and hung up. Then I went to Wexley Lane. It was too easy. No gate, no security. Just quiet townhomes tucked behind a Walgreens and a coffee shop. Her car was there. Parked in the visitor slot. I didn't knock. Didn't ring. Just stared at the door. Unit 14B. My wife had a second life in Unit 14B. That night, she came home like nothing happened. Asked what I wanted to watch. Said she'd heard good things about some new Netflix docuseries. Poured herself a glass of wine. Sat beside me like everything was normal. And I watched her. Not with rage. Not with confusion. With clarity. This wasn't about intimacy. Or love. Or some sudden emotional drought she hadn't told me about. This was precision cheating. Clinical. Almost mathematical. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an impulse. It was organized. She had built a second household with a man who called me buddy the one time we met. And she had logged every step. That spreadsheet wasn't just a ledger. It was a damn blueprint. I went into the garage that night and pulled the thumb drive from my jacket pocket. Slid it into a fresh Ziploc. Put it in the lockbox with our passports. Locked it. Pocketed the key. Because I wasn't going to blow this up. Not yet. Let Alice think she still had the upper hand. Let her keep her little strategy dinners and her 2-bedroom hideout. I'd already begun my own strategy. And if she thought her ledger was impressive, she had no idea what was coming. Because the next entry in my log wasn't a note. It was a move. And I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. There's a certain kind of quiet that shows up right before you do something irreversible. Like the air itself knows what's about to happen and it's just waiting. That was the kind of quiet sitting in the kitchen the night I decided to finally confront Alice. Not the kind of confrontation you see in movies where someone throws wine or screams. How could you? I didn't want drama. I wanted precision. Clean, sharp, undeniable. And I had it. I spent the week leading up to it keeping the act going. Same small talk over dinner. Same kiss on the cheek before bed. I even asked her if she wanted to check out that new Thai place on the east side. She said she had a budget call with a client that night. Sure she did. By that point, the evidence was a mile long. I had her fake calendar entries. I had photos of her car outside the townhouse. I had the joint property file with Christian's name. I had her own damn spreadsheet, the one that logged every detail of her little affair like it was a fiscal quarter she was trying to reconcile. And yet, I still didn't go for the easy punch. Because the goal wasn't to catch her. The goal was to make sure she couldn't talk her way out of it. So here's how I did it. Thursday night, same as always, she left at 5:15. Outfit a little too styled for a dinner with coworkers, but not enough to raise suspicion with a clueless husband. That was the costume now, just polished enough to feel plausible. I waited 20 minutes. Gave her a head start. Then I made the call. Hey, this is Joe Harland. I've got a last-minute order I need delivered. No contact drop-off, just leave it in the entryway. Yes, I'm sure the recipient will be home. I gave them the address. Unit 14B. 30 minutes later, the package was sitting on the floor just inside the front door of Alice and Christian's secret love nest. Not flowers. Not balloons. A manila folder. Inside that folder? Photocopies of everything. Her spreadsheet. A printout of the property records with both their names. Photos I'd taken of her car parked there. Screenshots of her fake calendar entries synced to her TV. And one single sheet on top, typed in bold. Read carefully. I'll see you tonight. Joe. Then I went home, ordered a pizza, and waited. She got back at 9:52 p.m. on the dot. Hair up in a twist, light perfume, that deliberately casual outfit that tried a little too hard to look like just another Thursday. She walked in with her usual, hey, babe. I responded like I always did. Hey. She walked into the kitchen and froze. Because sitting on the kitchen table was the exact same folder. Opened. With all the same pages, neatly spread out. She stood there for a second too long, then turned back toward me. What's all this? Her tone was calm, polished, like a lawyer feigning curiosity during a deposition. I stayed seated on the couch, remote in my hand. Baseball game on mute. You tell me, I said, nodding toward the folder. I'm guessing you've already seen this once tonight. She stared at it again, still not moving. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, Alice. Don't play dumb. It's not your style. Now she walked toward the table slowly, fingers brushing the papers. She picked up the property listing, turned it over like there might be a secret message on the back. Where did you get this? I could ask you the same thing. When were you going to tell me you co-signed a property with Christian Daniels? Or that your team dinners were actually, what's the phrase here, confirmations? I stood up now. Not yelling. Just done pretending. I've got notes going back 6 weeks. I know where you've been. I know when you've lied. I know how long it's been going on. Hell, you logged the affair in a spreadsheet, Alice. A spreadsheet. Her mouth opened slightly. Still no apology. Still trying to read the angle. She was always calculating. Joe, she said finally, it's not what you think. No, you don't get to say that. This isn't a guess. This is math. You gave me math. She paused. Realized she wasn't going to logic her way out of this one. I didn't mean for it to get like this. What did you mean for it to get like? I asked, crossing my arms. Was it just fun at first? A little emotional bookkeeping? Something to make the work week go by faster? She didn't answer. Was he the first? Now her face changed. Not guilt, offense. I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated like a criminal, she said, voice rising just enough to try regaining control. Criminal, I said, laughing bitterly. You think this is criminal? No, Alice. You don't need a defense attorney. You need a mirror. She picked up the spreadsheet again and finally admitted it. Fine. Yes. It's been going on. I wasn't going to lie if you really pressed me. But what did you expect, Joe? We haven't been happy for years. There it was. The classic move. Shift the blame. I raised my eyebrows. And instead of saying something, you decided to start a side gig with a man who uses gel and says cheers, unironically. You don't know him, she snapped. I don't need to. I know enough to recognize a cliché in khakis. She turned to the window, arms folded. Silence stretched for a long moment. Finally, I asked, why the spreadsheet, Alice? Of all things. Why track it like a balance sheet? She didn't look at me. I didn't plan to, she said quietly. It started as a way to keep my lies straight. And it turned into a second life. She nodded, barely. I looked at her for a while. This woman I'd spent 14 years with. I used to know her laugh, her tired voice, the way she rubbed her thumb over her coffee mug when she was thinking. Now she looked like a stranger trying to remember her lines. You lied to me, I said. For months. You built a second home. You documented the whole thing like it was a merger. And you were still coming home to me, eating my dinner, watching my TV, wearing the ring I gave you. She didn't answer. You don't love me, I said. Not a question. I do, she whispered. No. You love the life. You love the routine. You love not starting over. But me? You stopped loving me a long time ago. You just didn't want to admit it. She turned now, tears starting to well, but I cut it off. Don't. Her mouth closed. I picked up the folder and slid it back into its envelope. Tucked it under my arm. Grabbed my keys. Where are you going? She asked. I'm staying at Craig's tonight. Joe. No. We're past the conversation part. You'll get your say later. But right now, I need air that hasn't been filtered through lies. She followed me to the door, but didn't touch me. Didn't plead. That was the most honest thing she did all week. I stopped before leaving and looked back one last time. You know what hurts the most? I said. Not that you cheated. Not that you lied. It's that you ran the whole thing like a business and still thought you were the smartest person in the room. Then I shut the door. The silence that followed? It was real this time. No performance. No mask. Just the first breath of someone stepping out of a broken blueprint and into whatever comes next. And trust me, what comes next? She won't see it coming. The thing about revenge is people always expect it to be loud. Screaming in parking lots. Public scenes. Maybe someone throws a drink or shatters a plate. But that's not how real people get even. Not the smart ones. Real revenge doesn't make noise. It sits in a chair across from you, smiling politely, waiting for the moment you realize you've already lost. It took me 48 hours to calm down after I walked out on Alice. Not because I was angry. I'd already been through all that. No, I needed the time to decide what kind of man I wanted to be when I came back. And I decided on this. The kind of man who knows exactly where to stick the knife and twist it once, clean, no mess. So I called Christian. Straight to voicemail the first time. No surprise. The man hadn't heard my voice in years, probably assumed I was calling about something work-related. The second time, I left a message. Christian, it's Joe Harland. I'd appreciate it if you gave me 5 minutes of your time. It's not what you think. I promise it's worth your while. Call me. He called me back 20 minutes later. Joe. Hey, buddy. Wasn't expecting to hear from you. Everything okay? More than okay, I said. I've got something I want to give you. Something I think you'll really appreciate. Pause. Okay. You free this Saturday? Sure. I think so. Great. Bring Alice. It's dinner. My treat. He hesitated. Is this some kind of... It's exactly what it sounds like, Christian. A sit down. No yelling. No fists. Just clarity. He said yes. He was that kind of arrogant. I set the table for 4. Real tablecloth, folded napkins, wine glasses. Nothing fancy, just enough to feel like a real occasion. I invited Craig too, and his wife, just to add some balance. They didn't know the details, just that I needed their presence and silence. Craig's been my best friend for 20 years. He knew when to nod and keep his mouth shut. They arrived at 7:05. Alice walked in first, looking like someone forced into church. Christian followed, all smug grin and polished shoes, shaking hands like he was running for office. Joe, he said, wow, look at this setup. Didn't know you were the Martha Stewart type? I smiled. Surprises all around tonight. We sat down. I poured wine. Craig made small talk. Alice barely touched her drink. Christian dug right into the appetizers like this was his big night. I waited until the second course to begin. I'm glad you both came, I said, setting down my fork. I know it's unusual. Most people in our situation don't get a civilized conversation. Alice stiffened. Christian tilted his head. Our situation? Sure, I said. The situation where you've been sleeping with my wife. Setting up secret townhouses. Logging dates in spreadsheets. That one. The room froze. Craig's wife coughed into her napkin. Alice turned pale. Christian, to his credit, didn't deny it. He did what all smug guys do when they get caught, tried to make it philosophical. Joe, listen. I know this looks bad. Oh, Christian, I interrupted. It doesn't look bad. It is bad. But I'm not here to make you apologize. I'm here to give you something. He blinked. Give me something? I reached under the table and pulled out a folder. The lease. For Unit 14B. Signed over. Paid through December. Alice, your name's off it as of this morning. Christian, it's yours now. A parting gift. Christian glanced at Alice, then back at me. You're serious? Dead serious. Consider it a housewarming present. Alice spoke for the first time. Joe, what are you doing? What you never managed, I said. Making clean breaks. I pushed the folder across the table. That property? That was never about love. That was a hideout. Now it's his responsibility. Utilities, maintenance, all of it. I made sure the Wi-Fi's still in your name, though. Wouldn't want you to lose access to the ledger. Christian sat back, quiet for once. He finally realized this wasn't a meltdown. It was an execution. But that's not all, I said, standing up. I have something else. I walked over to the hallway and grabbed a wrapped box. Brought it back to the table. Set it in front of Alice. She looked at it like it might explode. What is this? Your wedding ring, I said. Had it cleaned. Thought you might want it back. She didn't move. It doesn't fit me anymore, she said softly. No, I replied. I imagine not. Christian stood up, uneasy. Joe, this is... Look, man, if this is some attempt to humiliate us. Oh, Christian, I said, turning to him. This isn't humiliation. This is documentation. A record. Like her spreadsheet. I just thought you both should experience what it feels like to be on the receiving end of precise logistics. Craig put his napkin down. Time to go, he said to his wife. They stood and left without another word. I faced Alice. You can keep the townhouse. You can keep the spreadsheet. But you don't get to keep the story. You don't get to be the victim. She said nothing. Christian reached for her hand. She pulled it away. I leaned in close, just enough for only the two of them to hear. I'm not broken, I said. I'm clean. That's more than either of you can say. Then I walked out. Left them in my own house, surrounded by a dinner neither of them touched. By the time I got in the car, my phone was already vibrating. Alice. Then Christian. Then Alice again. I didn't answer. I drove to Craig's. We drank a couple beers in the garage like we always did. No toasts. No big declarations. Just two guys who'd both seen how quickly a quiet life can turn inside out. The next day, the voicemail came. From Christian. Hey, Joe. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you crossed a line. That dinner, whatever that was, it's not going to change anything. Alice and I are still, well, we'll figure it out. You don't own her. And you sure as hell don't get to judge us. I saved the voicemail. Not because I cared about the words, but because Christian didn't realize it yet. He hadn't figured out that I wasn't trying to own Alice. I was just giving her away. With receipts. And unlike her, I knew exactly how to log the date. The thing about silence is, once it settles between two people who used to talk about everything, it takes root like mold. You start pretending it's just peace, just space, but really it's rot. And eventually you either clean it out or the whole thing caves in. I hadn't seen Alice in 2 weeks. Not since the dinner. After the townhouse folder, the ring in a box, and the voicemail Christian left that night, I figured that'd be it. But Alice wasn't one to go quietly. She started with texts. We should talk. Can we meet? Please don't make this harder than it is. I ignored them. Then she switched to letters. One showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just her handwriting. I opened it. 2 pages, handwritten. Mostly her trying to explain how complicated things had become. How she never planned on falling for someone else. How she didn't expect to feel abandoned when I didn't immediately call her back. That one made me laugh out loud. Abandoned? From the woman who kept a spreadsheet of her affair in our marital home? Still, something in her last message caught me. Meet me on the porch. No performances. Just real words. I read it 5 times. And then, on a Sunday afternoon, I drove home, not to Craig's place, not to a motel, but home. Pulled into the driveway like I always used to. Same garage door. Same porch steps I'd painted last spring. She was sitting on the porch swing, like it was any other day in our 14-year marriage. Like she hadn't detonated the whole thing with a smile and a Google Doc. She stood when she saw me. Hey. I nodded. Alice. We sat down, a cushion between us. I didn't speak first. She did. I deserved what you did. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for me. She nodded like she already knew. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Don't. Her eyes flicked toward me. Don't what? Don't waste a word that's small on something this big. She looked away, fingers picking at her sweater sleeve. I never planned to fall in love with him. I didn't go looking for it. You also didn't stop it, I said. You made appointments for it, built a calendar around it, budgeted for it. I was lonely, Joe. Then say that. She blinked. I just did. No. You said you fell into something. Like it was a puddle. Like you couldn't help it. I leaned forward. But you weren't drowning. You were scheduling. Don't rewrite this. She bit her lip, pulled her legs up on the swing. I felt like I was disappearing in our marriage, she said, quieter now. You were always working, or tired, or distracted. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. Every time I tried, it felt like I was annoying you. And instead of saying that, I said, you turned our marriage into a side hustle. She didn't argue. That spreadsheet, I went on, wasn't just some secret diary. It was proof that you weren't lost. You were deliberate. Every lie you told me, you logged. Every story you made up, you cataloged. You didn't just betray me, Alice. You archived it. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I guess I thought if I could keep it clean, organized, maybe it wouldn't feel so awful. Like if I could manage it, it wouldn't be what it really was. Infidelity? She nodded. Well, I said, you managed it. Right up until I did too. She turned toward me. So what happens now? I move on. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. You said I didn't listen, I said. But I was listening. Every time you said you were tired. Every time you said you had a meeting. Every time you told me we were fine. You didn't ask me how I was doing anymore, she whispered. And you didn't ask if I was still in love with you, I said. Maybe because you already knew. She sat back, stunned by the honesty. She wasn't used to it anymore. Neither was I. We were just two people on a porch, untangling 14 years of routines, choices, and quiet avoidances. I want to be clear, I said. I don't hate you. She looked up. But I don't trust you. And I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She nodded. That's fair. I'm not interested in rewriting this story to make either of us the hero, I added. We both got lazy. You just got strategic. She smiled, bitter. I'm good at strategy. Bad at feelings. No, Alice, I said. You're great at feelings. You just use them to get leverage. That one hit. We sat in silence for a while. Wind blew through the porch screens. A car passed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. She finally said, I ended it with him. I didn't respond. He's not who I thought he was. Of course he isn't, I said. He's a man who cheats with married women. You think those guys age well? She half smiled. I guess I thought I was different. You weren't. I stood. This conversation? It's our last one. There's no big closing act. No reunion. You wanted space. You got it. Now you get to live in it. Her voice was soft. And you. I get my life back, I said. And this time, I'm not sharing it with someone who keeps a second calendar. She stood too. We faced each other for a beat too long. Then she said, You were a good husband, Joe. No, I said. I was a decent one. But you were too busy cross-referencing your lies to notice. I walked down the steps. She didn't follow. No tears. No apology montage. Just silence. The kind that doesn't rot anymore. The kind that sets you free. I didn't move out right away. That would have been too easy. Alice assumed that I'd pack up, disappear, let her keep the house because it had too many memories or because it would be harder on her to start over. But no, I stayed. I paid the mortgage, took care of the yard, even started repainting the guest room. When she finally asked what I was doing, I told her the truth. This house has nothing to do with you anymore. And it didn't. Because once the dust cleared, once the wine glasses were cleaned from the disaster dinner and the last piece of that relationship had been boxed up, I stopped seeing our home as a crime scene. It became what it should have always been, mine. My sanctuary. My reset button. Alice didn't last long after that. A few weeks passed. Her things gradually disappeared, like she was sneaking them out in phases. I never asked where she was going, and she never offered it. That was part of our new arrangement, cordial distance. She left her key on the counter in a ceramic dish I made in some pottery class years ago, back when we still tried things together. I stared at that key for a while after she left. Then I threw the dish in the trash and changed the locks. That night, I sat on the back porch with a beer in my hand and silence in my ears. Real silence. The kind that doesn't come with second-guessing or the itch to check someone else's calendar. It was the best sound I'd heard in months. Life after betrayal isn't some dramatic montage. There's no inspirational music or slow-motion shots of you hitting the gym and getting a makeover. It's bills and laundry and weird text messages from people who found out too late and want the whole story. But every day, it got easier. I went back to work. My crew at the inspection office tried not to mention what happened, but the sideways glances were unavoidable. Eventually, it faded. They stopped walking on eggshells, and I stopped carrying around a storm cloud. And then one day, about a month later, I got a call from the city permitting office. "Hey Joe, we've got an interesting one," the woman on the line said. "New application for a commercial property on Wexley Lane. You might want to take a look." I didn't ask questions. Just drove out there the next morning with my clipboard and inspection gear. Pulled up to the same sad townhouse I'd once stood in front of, wondering how deep the lie went. Now it had a new owner, Christian Daniels. Apparently, he'd filed a permit to renovate the space, convert it into a boutique consulting office. His LLC was stamped all over the application. I almost laughed. The man had turned his hideout into a business address. I knocked. He answered. He looked tired, thinner, wearing a blazer that didn't fit quite right. "Well," he said, stepping back, "was wondering if they'd send you." "Lucky draw," I said, walking in. The place smelled like fresh paint and artificial lavender. The walls had been patched sloppily, like someone tried to erase what happened here with Home Depot clearance buckets. There were still wine rings on the table. A forgotten photo frame face down on the mantel. I didn't ask how Alice was. He didn't bring her up. We did the inspection in silence. I made notes. He paced. "You're not going to sabotage the permit, are you?" he asked finally. "No," I said. "Your drywall job might, though." He smirked. "Still got that edge." "No," I corrected him. "I just don't have to pretend to like you anymore." He didn't argue. When I left, I submitted the report that afternoon. Fair and clean. No pettiness. No passive-aggressive comments buried in the fine print. Just facts. That's what cheaters never understand. People like me don't need revenge after a while. We've already won by walking away with our dignity intact. Let them live in the mess they built. A few days after that, I got a call from Alice. "Don't hang up," she said. I didn't. I just wanted to say, thank you. For what? For not burning it all down. I sat with that for a second. Was that what you expected? I don't know. I guess I thought if I got caught, you'd scream. Destroy things. Go full drama. Why? Because that's what you would have done. She didn't answer. "Look," she said finally, "you don't have to respond. I just wanted you to know that. I think about what I lost. A lot." "Good," I said. "You should." That was the last time we spoke. 6 months passed. I started sleeping again. Started laughing again. Got a new inspection truck. Finally ditched the old one with the broken AC and the coffee stain that looked like Ohio. Even started dating. Slowly. Casually. And every now and then, I'd meet someone who asked, "So what happened to your marriage?" I'd pause. Smile. Then say, "She built a second life in a spreadsheet. I found it." I let her have it. Some would laugh. Some would stare. One woman said, "That sounds like a Netflix special." But I didn't care. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was free. Not because Alice gave me closure. Because I gave it to myself. The truth is, the end of something doesn't have to be fireworks or tragedy. Sometimes it's just a door closing quietly, a key left in a dish, and a man finally remembering what it feels like to breathe in a house that no longer lies to him. And if that's not a happy ending, I don't know what is. Subscribe to the channel